The Konica Hexanon 45mm f1.8 was the lens supplied with the Konica Auto S2, a fixed-lens rangefinder camera that was made in Japan and released on the market in 1965 with a price tag of $100. At the time, Konica lenses were recognized for their outstanding performance, and the company used their fame for its marketing strategy, coming up with the slogan, "The lens alone is worth the price." I took this lens from a non-working Konica Auto S2 rangefinder that I found on eBay for $20. This Konica lens has 6 elements in 4 groups. The aperture is clickless and ranges from f1.8 to f16. The diaphragm is made of 5 straight aperture blades. This lens accepts filters with 55mm diameter. It comes with a super awesome built-in lens hood, but there is also a version that was made without it. It weighs just 172 grams. On the back, this lens is quite different. Once removed from the body of the rangefinder camera, it has no mount and no focusing mechanism. In order to adapt it to my Sony camera, I used an M42 to M52 step-up ring and a 13 to 18mm M42 to NEX focusing helicoid. I simply placed the step-up ring on the back of the lens, super glued it so it stays in place, and once the glue was dry, I screwed the lens to the focusing helicoid and I was ready to use it on my Sony camera. When this lens was part of the Konica Auto S2, it had a pretty unremarkable minimum focusing distance of 90 centimeters. But when adapted to digital, the minimum focusing distance becomes only 36 centimeters. The Konica Hexanon 45mm f1.8 rangefinder lens is a true gem. It is without a doubt one of the best bargains I've come across in the 45 to 55mm focal lengths. There is almost nothing bad that I can say about it. Every time I take it out with me, I'm super excited to see what it can do because this lens is full of character. It renders out of focus blur in a very unusual way, and its bokeh might be a bit wild for some people, but I really like the way it looks. When shot wide open, it's already sharp in the center, and when stopped down further, it gets crazy sharp, almost unbelievably sharp. For a tiny lens that I pulled out of a non-working rangefinder camera from the 60s, this one really exceeded my expectations. I'm still amazed at how well the details are preserved in this caterpillar photo, even when examined at 100% magnification. After all, this is a 55-year-old lens that was never meant to be used for close-up photography. Some people might be put off by the pentagon shapes that appear in the out-of-focus lights when the lens is top down, but that doesn't bother me and I actually quite like this look. When it comes to colors, this lens is also an excellent performer. It produces beautiful images with nice saturation and contrast, and there is something about its colors that I can only describe as unique and unusual. Because this lens is most likely single-coated, when shot wide open towards the sun, it produces really crazy flares, so be aware of that and use the built-in lens hood if you're trying to avoid flares. What amazes me about this lens is how well controlled chromatic aberrations are even when shot wide open. For a vintage lens made in the 60s, this is really impressive. But my favorite way to utilize this lens is for close-up photography. I love using it as a pseudo macro because it performs unbelievably well. The interesting thing is that this lens was not designed to be shot at really close distances, but when adapted to mirrorless, it really excels in that regard. Sometimes I even add extension tubes to it so I can focus even closer, and this lens has never let me down. Being small, lightweight, and extremely sharp makes this lens a great choice for almost any situation. And its build quality is outstanding, made entirely out of metal with 0 plastic parts. This lens feels extremely solid and will continue to perform for a long time. So all in all, I can't praise it enough. It's a killer lens for $20. Yes, you will need to get a few parts and a couple of tools to refit this lens to digital, but the time and effort are totally worth it. So if you're intrigued and want to try this DIY project, I'll put a link in the description below to an awesome Flickr group that has step-by-step instructions on how to adapt this lens. And if you have any further questions, feel free to ask me in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time here at Vintage Optics.